Hello, everybody. Good morning or good afternoon or evening, wherever you are. I'm Julie Flagar, President and CEO of Project Sleep, and I'm really excited today to be here with Becky. Hi, Becky.
Hi, Becky. Oh, hi, everybody.
And where are you joining us from?
I am in Navarre, Florida, in the
Nice,
Panhandle.
nice. And so what's it like there today?
I am overdressed in a sweater. My house is actually a little colder than it is outside, but it's a little humid out.
Well, I bet a lot of people around the country will be jealous of that.
Yes, and my
Uh,
family in Massachusetts with their snow.
Yep, definitely. Well, we're so excited to have Becky share her story today of living with idiopathic hypersomnia. And so just before Becky gets started, just a quick reminder to everybody that we do these story sharing sessions for education and awareness purposes. But of course, we're not providing medical advice to anybody. So if anything about Becky's story like resonates with you and makes you question anything about your own health experience, we really encourage you to bring those questions to your doctor. But of course, if there's questions that you have about Becky's experience, please put those into the Facebook chat, and we will, of course, have time at the end for Becky to answer some of your questions. Also along those lines, please, if you're, willing to share where you're tuning in from, it's really fun to see on the Facebook all the different places that people are joining from. And let's see, I feel like, is there anything else I'm forgetting? Um, well, we're just at the start of a new year for Project Sleep, so we're gearing up for the Sleep In, which will be in March, and some exciting broadcasts in February. We're going to have a broadcast about narcolepsy and relationships and dating, and actually, it's going to be on Valentine's Day, so come join us for a very special Valentine's Day celebration, talking
That's
about
funny.
love and romance and all things narcolepsy and dating and so that'll be fun. And I think that's it for now. So without further ado, I will introduce Becky. And if you want to go ahead and pull up your slides. Becky Tallman is a late blooming woodcrafter who also loves caring for sea turtles. She started getting sleepy in her early 20s and received a diagnosis of idiopathic hypersomnia in 2013 at the tender age of 48. As a speaker with Project Sleep's Rising Voices program, Becky shares her story of life with an invisible illness with hopes of raising awareness and educating others, with some laughter along the way. Without further ado, Becky, please take it away.
All right. Well, thank you for the introduction, Julie. I am very excited to share my story. And as you mentioned, of course, we'll be answering questions at the end. I was the youngest of four children, and that is me with a little sideways glance and with my parents and my siblings. And we are actually in front of the main dining hall at the camp where my parents met and fell in love. So that's up in New Hampshire. But that is me in my 1/4 shirt because I wasn't big enough to have a full number. I was a cute and curious kid and loved to be outside. I could be found either riding my bike around the neighborhood or climbing trees. I was very involved at church because my dad was the minister. And of course, I was a Brownie Scout. You can see in that picture in my mom's troop. I started a lifelong love affair with running in 9th grade. And it was in high school that my dad started to talk to me about sleep debt. He was mildly concerned that I could burn the candle at both ends and sleep in whenever I was given the opportunity. But of course, I was an all-knowing, immortal teenager and didn't really pay much attention. I took my page too soon. Believe it or not, I actually ran hurdles in high school, and my mother loved that picture because she thought it reflected my joy of running. But I'm actually really laughing because the student photographer was sitting in my lane at the end of the track. And on the right is Becky, the bouncing bobcat. I was the high school mascot my senior year, and I did front walkovers after every touchdown or extra point to help the crowd keep track of the score. My folks lovingly crafted that outfit that I'm wearing with my mom sewing and my dad using up several Sharpie markers to make the stripes. While it was in high school, I said my father started talking about sleep debt because I would sleep in whenever I could, and I didn't really pay much attention. It was actually in PT school in my early 20s, during my specialty PT classes, that I first started falling asleep in class. And I remember, fortunately, there was no cell phones, there was no TikTok or Instagram, so it didn't get blasted all over the internet. But I do remember trying to pay attention in neurology or anatomy, but nodding off instead. And it wasn't just that I'd been out late the night before. It happened often enough and annoyed my professor enough that the head of the program suggested I get a workup to discover what was going on. So I had blood tests, CAT scan, MRI, but no sleep study. And there was nothing conclusively given as a reason for the tiredness. So the doctors told me to sleep more and eat better. Right, I'm in college. The nodding off was embarrassing, and we handled it by having a good friend sit nearby and nudging me when she thought I was falling asleep. So that is me on the left on my aunt's couch after a day's work at my hospital clinical. When I got home, I was too tired to even make it upstairs to my room. My aunt fortunately thought it was adorable, but sleeping for 20 or even 60 minutes never made me feel any better. But I had a busy college life and everyone was tired, right? So I pushed the fatigue aside. I ran cross country in the fall. I did a brief stint on the springboard diving team. I learned how to scuba dive. I worked 2 jobs and I did my first triathlon with a little help from my friends there on the right. I graduated in 1988 and got married in January of 1990, in spite of the fact that shortly after we were engaged, I slept through the entire car ride on the Going to the Sun Highway on a visit to Montana. I also enjoyed sleeping till noon on the weekends whenever I could. And then we had 3 kids in 94, 96, and 97. And all moms are tired, right? I was fortunate to not ever be so tired that I couldn't get up with them in the middle of the night, but it sure didn't make the next day go any better. But then fast forward through the kids growing up, and we hosted 4 exchange students. Our kids were very musical, and that's a picture of all 3 of them at one of many piano recital, band, and choral concerts. And on the right, the 3 of them are sitting at the top of the stairs Christmas morning. Somehow my husband convinced them that they had to wait right there until 8 a.m. on every Christmas morning. I found it best personally to keep moving. I was working part-time as a physical therapist. I was teaching scrapbooking classes. I was running triathlons and fundraising with a major charity foundation. And I loved the workouts, but they exhausted me. I was also a volunteer scuba diver at a nearby aquarium. And I was tired, but everybody was tired, right? I'd try. I'd go to bed early. I'd sleep for 12 hours and wake up thinking I should be raring to go. And then 2 hours later, I'd want to take a nap. But I had obligations in a family, so I kept going. As the kids got older, I'd get up in the mornings and go to the Y for a brief swim and a spin class. And then I'd come home, get the kids on the bus, and lie down for a quick nap that would turn into a 3-hour sleep. And while naps seemed unavoidable, they didn't make me feel refreshed. I remember one occasion after I'd gotten the kids out the door and I flopped down on my already made bed for one of these quick naps. And when I woke up, I could feel the sun coming through the skylight onto my legs. I could feel the comforter under my cheek. I knew I was awake, but I couldn't move my arms or legs. It was frightening, almost as though I was petrified in all senses of the word. And I just ended up going back to sleep for another 30 minutes or so. And when I woke up again, I was fine. And this happened several times, but was less terrifying as it went on because I knew if I just fell back asleep, I'd be okay. But then when the kids were in, 12th, 10th, and 8th grade, I went back to work full time. And I was even more tired all the time. But wasn't everybody? I started using 5-hour energy shots to get through a workday. I had to make sure lights were on and shades were up in patients' rooms because I remember this one time I actually fell asleep doing exercises with a patient. Fortunately, we were both sitting down at the time. On the left, that's me dancing in the lobby of the hospital with a sweet little woman who had terrible, terrible lung disease. We had taken her outside because it was a beautiful spring day and it took 3 of us because we had to bring extra oxygen tanks with us. When we came back inside, there was someone playing the grand piano in the lobby, and so we stopped to listen. She was happily swaying in her wheelchair, so I asked if she wanted to dance. She hesitated because she didn't want to get in trouble. And I said, "What are they going to do, kick you out?" So we danced a little. But back to me being exhausted all the time, I realized that I was really too tired. Yes, I had 3 kids and I was working full time, and all full-time moms or working moms were tired, right? But I was just more bushed, knackered, and plain old pooped than I should have been. I started planning my day according to when I thought I could lie down for a little bit. I went to my primary care practitioner and she took my concerns seriously. She screened me for depression. I had blood tests and endocrinology tests. We assessed my diet, and she gave me the Epworth Sleepiness Scale to fill out. It's an 8-item questionnaire that you mark on a scale from 0 to 3 about how likely you are to fall asleep in any given situation. Driving, sitting, talking, riding as a passenger. Anything over a 9 is a concern. And I was at 15 when she came back into the room. So that her eyes went a little wide, and that got me an overnight sleep study, where they hook you up to electrodes and sensors and put you in a strange room with a strange bed, knowing that people were going to watch you sleep and say, good night. But there was nothing to explain the tiredness. I didn't have sleep apnea and I didn't have restless legs. So, of course, I continued to complain. A physician assistant from the lung, sleep, and critical care office, who spent more time on our floor at the hospital than she really should have, heard me. In the search for answers, one does get a little tired of hearing all of the things that one should do to feel better. Get more sleep, exercise, eat better. Like, I haven't tried any of those. But she told me I needed a nap study. I was like, I've had a nap study. But she insisted, no, I needed an overnight nap study, an overnight sleep study, followed by an all-day nap study. This was new information. A nap study? Sign me up. So I had another overnight sleep study to make sure I got a good night's sleep. Then they woke me and told me I'd be taking a nap every 2 hours. Sounded great, but they didn't actually let me sleep. A normal person, after a good night's sleep, when presented with the opportunity to nap in a quiet, dark room, may or may not be able to fall asleep, and it might take them 15 to 20 minutes to do so. After each nap session, the tech asked me if I thought I'd fallen asleep, how long did it take me to fall asleep, and how long did I think I'd slept? And not nearly long enough, I can tell you. The sleep study was Sunday into Monday, and the tech told me the doctor would call in 10 to 12 days. So I was a little surprised and felt a bit of concern when the office actually called me on Thursday, just 3 days later, to schedule an appointment for me on Friday. When I hesitated because I was supposed to be at work all day on Friday, she created a kind of a sense of worrisome urgency by telling me that she was authorized to fit me in the schedule whenever I could get there. Okay, I'll be there tomorrow at 10:30. The doctor bustled through the door and he jumped right in with, glad you're here. I thought I was going to have to track you down in the hospital to give you this medication you need. And I remember thinking, yikes, could we maybe start with a diagnosis before we learn the treatment? And there it was, idiopathic hypersomnia. Huh? So now at 48 years old, I had the name of a disorder to sum up and validate the symptoms that had started in my early 20s. So great, I have a super rare sleep disorder that has no known cause. Go ahead and give me some medication so I can have my life back. My doctor broke down the words and told me that they meant that they really had no idea why I was so tired. So let the amateur researching begin. I've learned a great deal since then, although the cause remains unknown. There's no cure and it gets progressively worse. My fatigue is unpredictable and inconsistent, but always lurking. Idiopathic hypersomnia, it turns out, is a chronic neurological sleep disorder. People with IH are very, very sleepy despite getting normal or longer amounts of sleep, but the exact cause is unknown. It's estimated to affect 1 in 20,000 people, or about 17,000 Americans and 400,000 people worldwide. So in the state of Florida, where I'm living, with a population of 21.8 million people, there might be close to 2,000 people with IH. And in Santa Rosa County, where I live, a population of 194,000, there might be 9 or 10 people with idiopathic hypersomnia, but I've never seen any of them. Symptoms, of course, vary by person, but they may include trouble staying awake and alert during the day, which is called excessive daytime sleepiness. Remember when I talked about falling asleep in class in college or nodding off while doing exercises with patients? That's an example of EDS. When I talked about getting what I thought was more than adequate sleep at night and still feeling like I needed a nap the next day, that's also excessive daytime sleepiness. Might have a long sleep duration, because although sleeping for long periods at night is not a requirement of the disorder, people with IH typically sleep at least 11 hours a day and may sleep for 14 or more during a 24-hour period. But it's unrefreshing sleep. Even a full night's sleep or long naps result in feeling no better or worse upon waking than when falling asleep. Sleeping till noon, long sleep duration. Taking a nap even though I slept until noon, that's also considered long sleep duration. You might feel very groggy or confused or disoriented when waking up from an overnight sleep or nap. And this is called sleep inertia or sleep drunkenness, and it may last for hours after working. I kind of see sleep inertia as physics at work. My body at rest wants to stay at rest, and getting up in the morning is a slow and difficult process. So when we talked about taking naps that were unavoidable but still left me feeling tired, check. Sometimes there's extreme difficulty with the waking up. People with IH commonly fall back asleep multiple times while trying to awaken, or they need multiple alarms or assistance from others. Sometimes the alarm schedule on my phone is a whole screen long. I've also asked other friends or family members to call and wake me up if being somewhere was crucial. But for the most part, I don't schedule appointments in the mornings. Some people might fall asleep accidentally while driving or working. I did discover that sitting in stop and go traffic was likely to put me asleep. I remember even clipping a mirror one time. Mental fogginess or brain fog, which impairs cognitive functions such as thinking or articulating thoughts clearly, remembering, concentrating, paying attention, trouble documenting at work. You bet. Stay tuned. Some people with IH also experience headaches, dizziness, cold hands or feet. I certainly have the headaches. There's also some difficulty with coping with social life, work, or study because of sleepiness, which can lead to depression. And I've had to give up a lot of social things for IH. I'm mostly content with my slower pace, but I hate to feel like a disappointment. For example, I spent the entire reception of my nephew's wedding in the car because I was just too tired to be around other people. Fortunately, they were very gracious about it. Some folks also have disrupted nighttime sleep, and I have less of that and more of a mild anxiety about going to sleep at a reasonable hour because it's still hard to get up and going in the morning either way. I also mentioned sleep paralysis, which isn't necessarily a symptom of IH, but I knew I was awake but couldn't move my arms and legs, and it was kind of a weird feeling. And that about sums it up for me. 2 hours of sleep, 10 hours of sleep, I'm going to wake up tired. So diagnosis usually involves medical tests to check for other potential causes of sleepiness, such as narcolepsy or other sleep disorders. And seeing a sleep specialist, of course, is recommended. So remember, I started with all of the blood tests and my primary care practitioner and ended up at the lung sleep and critical care folks. The healthcare provider will ask questions about symptoms and sleep. Some providers may ask people to monitor their sleep and wake activity for several days by keeping a sleep diary or wearing a clinical device like an actigraph, and I didn't have to do either of those. To check for other sleep disorders, the overnight sleep study, also called a polysomnogram, is done, and that's followed by the multiple sleep latency test the next day, where the person is asked to nap for 20 minutes every 2 hours. So people who fall asleep very quickly but don't enter REM sleep may have idiopathic hypersomnia. These tests are done, of course, in a sleep center or lab with the sensors that measure breathing, heart rate, brain activity, and body movements while asleep. So those pictures are representing my 5 naps because it was at the doctor's office that I learned that I had fallen asleep in 6 minutes, 2.5 minutes, 2.5 minutes, 2 minutes, and 1 minute. Because I don't have cataplexy, which is associated with the narcolepsy, and I didn't fall asleep immediately into REM sleep during naps, I have IH. There is, of course, currently no cure for IH, and the goal of treatment is to live well by managing alertness. So treatment for symptom management varies by person, but may include medications to help people feel more alert and active when awake and to sleep more deeply at night. They may include stimulants or non-stimulant wake-promoting agents, oxybates, antidepressants, and medications that target the GABA system. There is only one medication approved by the FDA specifically for idiopathic hypersomnia, and the other medications are known to be effective at treating sleepiness and other disorders such as narcolepsy and are used off-label to treat the IH. Treating other sleep disorders and avoiding certain medications is helpful to reduce other potential causes of sleepiness. Coping strategies, of course, also vary from person to person, but it might include social support, such as meetup groups or social media, counseling with a therapist for emotional support, and to develop strategies for navigating life with IH, and of course, improvements in general health and wellness through sleep hygiene, diet, and fitness. So I started out using that daily medication that the doctor wanted to track me down in the hospital to give me. And at first, I really thought I'd gotten my life back. I'd do chores or errands and just apprehensively cringe, waiting for the wave of fatigue to hit, and it didn't come. So I'd happily keep going. And while naps used to be a whenever I possibly could kind of thing, they became much more rare because while the daytime med doesn't always stop me from being tired, it keeps me from being sleepy. So napping was actually difficult. However, in the last several years, and especially in the last 9 to 10 months, the fatigue has gotten much worse, which restarted the search for better symptom management. We tried increasing the dose of my daytime medication, but it makes me do some weird posturing of my mouth and my teeth and my tongue that I can't consciously replicate to show anybody, but it does cause soreness in the end of my tongue and in my mouth. I recently tried several different dosages of the only FDA-approved medication, and I had very high hopes and gave it a very long and dedicated trial, but we've concluded that the side effects weren't worth the minimal benefit. And it was a nighttime medication that was supposed to encourage sleep consolidation and better REM sleep, and it seemed to help a little bit with sleep inertia in the morning, but overall I felt worse, not better on this med, and I went back to napping during the day. I tried to keep exercising until it just got to be too much, and I try to maintain a fairly clean lifestyle that somehow manages to include chocolate and also peanut butter and gel and fluff sandwiches. And I've also made brief forays into yoga and meditation and even tapping without noticeable improvement. I tried brain jogging to facilitate neurogenesis in an effort to help my short-term memory and brain fog, but it actually seemed to make me more tired. So now we've added in as much as 400 to 600 milligrams of caffeine daily to help keep me awake. And honestly, 300 milligrams keeps me awake pretty well, but it makes going to sleep more difficult because I tend to overdo it, the next day is usually not nearly as productive. And then anything more than the 300 milligrams of the caffeine as a stimulant makes me do that weird posturing thing with my mouth. It's only been in the last few years that I've searched for and found online support, and it's how I got to be part of the Rising Voices program, speaking with you now. I personally only know one person with narcolepsy, and a couple of months ago, I actually talked to someone who also had IH, but I haven't actually met someone. But we're rare like unicorns, but apparently we are out there. So what's life like with idiopathic hypersomnia? The kids grew up, my siblings did too. Unfortunately, the kids don't seem to remember me as a sleepy mom. I've been blessed by a husband who, although he doesn't fully understand my condition, loves me anyway and supports me by never making me feel bad that I just can't do what I used to do. He reminds me to take my medications when I especially don't want to forget to start them early. And he lets me rant and rave my frustration out and understands that the volunteering is important to my mental health. And then there's the frustration of other responses. I get that other lay people want to tell me to take a sleeping pill and meditate, etc. But I had an appointment with an independent medical examiner a year or so ago. And when I asked him if he was familiar with idiopathic hypersomnia, he replied with, yeah, I get tired too. And he was even nice enough to suggest I try crystal meth to help me stay awake. Not the answer I was looking for. My cousin has sleep apnea, and her energy markedly improved when she was diagnosed and began to wear a CPAP. So I wistfully sighed in our family group chat and said that I was happy for her and wished that wearing a mask to bed would make me feel better as well. And my sister replied, well, then why don't you wear one? And I responded with, if you are limping, it doesn't mean we should do surgery on your ankle because the problem might stem from your knee or your hip. My sleep issue isn't improved with a mask, although I often try to mask the fatigue with a smile because I get tired of saying I'm tired. I long ago had stopped my involvement with the triathlons, but I wanted to try and stay active. I discovered senior games and I learned how to throw shot put and hammer and even to pole vault. I think I even cleared my own height once. I wanted to keep going, but again, my performance suffered due to the fatigue and I had to stop again. I often compare myself with an Etch-a-Sketch because when horizontal and feeling good, I make grand plans and feel like I want to tackle the day. And then I stand up and the energy drains. Work became more and more difficult for me because although patient care didn't suffer, documentation surely did. This was the brain fog. I couldn't adapt to typing out notes while sitting with a patient. I'd rather hear their stories and watch their form. But when I sat down to document, I couldn't come up with the professional phrasing necessary to write a concise and understandable note. I often missed sections of checkoff boxes in the electronic medical record, and it's really hard to be bad at your job after being pretty good at it for 25 years. I worked briefly at a preschool with some special needs kids who were adorable, but even that one time a week commitment became too much. After several discussions with my husband, we decided not to renew my PT license at the end of November, which was a really hard decision. We moved to Florida 4 years ago, which meant that there were a lot of changes. And while I attempted working locally, I couldn't keep up. The fatigue has gotten gradually worse, and the search for symptom management is tiresome all on its own. But I've learned to find great pleasure sitting in my chair, or my nest as we call it, and watching the critters in my backyard. These are just a few of them. There's also foxes, possums, and flying squirrels, and I even saw a live armadillo once. I have, however, become pretty skilled at changing plans on the fly, although it usually means that I left the house thinking I was going to make 3 stops for errands, and I end up going home after getting the first one done. A good picture story to help people understand is the spoon theory and its corollary, the fork theory. We used to tease a friend's mom who could clean her house or pay her bills or go grocery shopping, but not all on the same day. I hear you, Marie. Many people have heard of the spoon theory, which essentially says that we have so many spoonfuls of energy at the beginning of every day. And the various activities you do during the day use up those spoonfuls. Those of us with energy issues may start the day with less spoons or smaller spoons, and it may take us more spoons to get anything done. So I might start with 10 spoons, and getting a shower and getting dressed might take 4 of those spoons. You might start the day with 20, and getting a shower and dressed might take you only 1. See how that kind of energy management is going to fall apart pretty fast for me? I can sometimes push on by borrowing spoons from the next day, but you can see how that really isn't helpful in the long run either. The fork theory, on the other hand, talks about all those little things that happen during the day, from small cocktail fork-sized annoyances to pitchfork-sized triggers. I might be able to handle several little things at the same time, but several serving fork-sized annoyances can really send me over the edge. And everybody has a fork limit, and certainly it can vary from day to day. I have recently become more vocal about my diagnosis. One of the things that I've started to share is the Idiopathic Hypersomnia Severity Scale, which is a 14-question quiz. The Epworth Sleepiness Scale was designed for people who haven't been diagnosed, just to see how sleepy you are and then to figure out why. This one is specific to IH, and the folks I share it with don't generally have IH, but it helps them to understand that I have to think about each of these situations on a daily basis. Have you ever heard the story about the college professor who asked the class, what do they do on a daily basis to stay safe? And the women yell out their answers of staying on the phone, letting somebody know where they are, when they're going to be home, always walking with somebody on campus, triple or double locks on their doors, mace, pepper spray. And the men all kind of look around at each other and they can't think of an answer because personal safety isn't something that they always have to think about in the same way. So it's the same with this questionnaire that I share. The folks that I show it to probably, or at least hopefully, don't have a sleep disorder, but I'll ask them to think about the absolute most tired they've ever been to answer the questions. The other thing I've done is to write a couple of poems to help convey my frustration with not being able to do the things that I could do before. My sister calls it channeling my inner Dr. Seuss. Are you ready? I wish you had known me when I wasn't so tired, when I was pretty good at my job and I hadn't retired. I wish you had known me when I was filled with more glee, happy and bouncy and pretty carefree. I wish you had known me before IH hit me so hard, when I could do all the things without plans to discard. I wish you had known me when I could go all dang day. Now I just wave goodbye and I have to stay. I wish you had known me before my energy departed, back in my youth, before all this started. I wish you had known me, as I wistfully recall, when I skied in the winter and ran in the fall. I wish you had known me when I freely gave time before forced to retreat to this new paradigm. I wish you had known me as the me I miss so. I was light, I was lively, a real dynamo. I wish you had known me when I was reliable and strong, when I got most things correct instead of most things all wrong. I wish I had known you when I could support and take care, but now I'm the one in need of your prayer. That husband of mine who lets me rant and rave is also very indulgent about my new hobby, which is woodworking. Well, wood playing. We call it Becky's Custom Palette Workshop, where no two projects are ever alike, no matter how hard she tries. On the left, I am working on sanding a tabletop that I actually salvaged from my college student union when they renovated the snack bar a million years ago. But there's also been birdhouses and decorations for various seasons, and we actually even used pallet wood as wainscoting in our guest room. I am fortunate to volunteer at 2 different turtle places who are very tolerant of my ever-changing stamina. If I can't get in to do a shift or if I have to leave early, they know they can count on me to work on stuff from home. In fact, I haven't worked a shift in the last 10 months, but I've gotten really good at patio umbrella repair. And I've created some wooden photo ops for the center as well. On the right, I am holding one of the turtles in rehab. His name is Mr. Wright because he was born without flippers on the left side. He was just a tiny hatchling when they brought him in. I used to try to do physical therapy with him because he always kept his head turned to the right, so I would put the food outside his left peripheral vision to try and make him turn his head. And now he's just doing great. And just like I am very high up on these stilts at the vent at the Turtle Center, I have high hopes for the future. Maybe a cure, maybe a more effective medication. Maybe sharing my story will help someone else recognize that their fatigue isn't normal. In the meantime, I remain pretty upbeat and happy, and those closest to me can generally tell how I'm feeling and know I'm trying my best. The sun and the sea and the occasional sand dollar also lift my mood as well. Because of low awareness, even among physicians, and misperceptions, remember the independent examiner who also said he got tired, there's an average of 8 to 15 years between symptom onset and diagnosis. It's estimated that the majority of people with IH or narcolepsy are actually currently undiagnosed or misdiagnosed with epilepsy, depression, and even schizophrenia. It was 27 years from my first mortifying experiences of nodding off in class to an official diagnosis. And raising awareness is so important because of continued misguided misinformation. Many people are tired, and those of us with sleep disorders are led to believe that we just need to push through. So when your friends or family constantly complain of fatigue, maybe dig a little deeper, because being tired isn't a normal state or a badge of honor. And while nutrition, exercise, and sleep hygiene are important and fairly simple, although not easy to change, fatigue might come from a different source. Sharing my story today as part of the Rising Voices program, a program of the nonprofit organization Project Sleep, which empowers patient advocates to share their stories and improve public understanding of IH and other sleep disorders. Thank you for being here to listen.
Yay, Becky. Great job. Thank you so much for sharing. This has been incredible. You are such a great presenter and yeah, and I know how limited those spoons are or those forks are. So, just so grateful that you take the time and energy to even do this because I know it can actually take a lot to do something like this. So we have a great group of people watching on Facebook. Please send over any questions you have for Becky on Facebook. I was going to start with just a few of my questions for you. Um, I was curious when you talked about the fork theory. Is that something you came up with, or?
No, 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 no. I'm all about search and reapply.
I love that.
And actually, the woman that I got it from, and honestly, I don't remember, but she laughed about her husband said, "You might think it's weird that I get up to go to the bathroom in the middle of a conversation, but you just dumped a financial burden on me and I already had to pee. And getting up to go to the bathroom is the fork I can get rid of the fastest." Because he couldn't concentrate when he was also thinking about, needing to do
Yeah,
something else.
I love it.
Yeah, I thought it was a great theory.
Yeah. And so, basically, how did you get involved with the community? And, I know you said that you haven't met another person with IH in person yet. You've met one person with narcolepsy, but how did you find Rising Voices?
Through finally reaching out for social support, finding it online, probably on Facebook first, and then kind of digging a little bit deeper. And then when I saw that there was a possibility to be one of the Rising Voices speakers, I thought I could do that. I could do that. So I applied, and here I am.
Oh, that's so awesome. I'm so glad.
Me
Because
too.
yeah, I mean, community can be online before in person, but we hope you can meet more people in person too.
Mhm.
So, you talked a lot about lots of different hobbies. I was curious how you got connected with the turtle organizations and got interested in that.
I was a volunteer scuba diver at an aquarium when I lived in Pennsylvania. And while the turtle was not the main focus, it was one of the animals that we fed. So when my husband and I decided to move to Florida, and I was obviously going to have to give that up in Maryland, I just looked online and I found this itty tiny little turtle center, right 6 miles from where we end up living. And I actually found that before I found our house because I just wanted to be involved. You find your tribe, you find your people, and then the that center is more focused on education and conservation. It's not a show aquarium kind of thing. There is a sea turtle there, and there are some other animals. We have an expansion that's getting ready to open soon. And then the other turtle place that I go to, or used to go to, but I've been too tired to go to, is focuses more on the rehabilitation of stranded turtles. So that's why I'm holding Mr. Wright, because he was brought in because obviously he was having issues trying to get out to sea. And it's been really interesting, the helping with surgeries to get hooks out of esophagus, and yeah, it's pretty cool. They do a
Oh,
lot. They're an amazing dedicated group.
Oh, wow. You have so many different interests and talents. And I absolutely loved your poem, which is also a display of another talent, a poet. And it really resonated in me how you talked so much kind of about feeling the loss of, some of these
Mhm.
things that are inside you, that you can't maybe fully do to your full expression, So, just thank you so much for sharing that. I
Mhm.
know that will resonate with a lot of people. So yeah, and there's just yeah, it's just important to like know that other people feel that way too. And so
Mhm.
um so you have a lot of wildlife and you sh shared a few pictures in your slides of the wildlife in your backyard.
I
Uh,
did.
did you have a few more you might like to share with us?
I might have a few more. Let's get out of there and go to here. And go to here and go to here. All this technology.
I know.
There we go. All right. And this is just very small. Um, I probably have 1,000 pictures of backyard birds and whatever. That's an owl in the backyard. He turned and looked at me like, all right, go ahead, take the picture, would you?
Oh, oh my God.
There he is on a different day and different lighting, how he camouflages with the tree so well. That's a squirrel sitting in his little chair. And I have corn that's on a little spinny thing. There's the raccoon reaching for it.
Oh my God, that is precious.
And then the biggest thing that really surprised me, well, these are the fox. So you see the one fox facing one way, one adult facing the other, and then there's actually a fifth kit running around somewhere. And birds, I think that's a bluebird, but it just looks really funny head on. But the weirdest thing about moving to Florida was everybody told me to be careful of alligators, but what I have in my backyard are actually bears, black
Wow.
bears. He thinks he's hiding.
Oh my God.
He was trying to get to the bird feeder on my bedroom window. And then when he heard me on the porch, so that's the bird feeder and that's my bedroom window.
Oh my God.
But I
Huge.
mean, I don't have small kids. I don't have pets. I'd rather him terrorize my yard. So
Ah,
this corn is on a bungee, which is really funny because when he changes his grip, it goes flying out of his little paws.
oh my God.
The gate can be pushed open by a toddler, but they have created their own doggy door by
Ah,
punching out a hole in my wooden fence. And I send this to people and they go, oh, that's such a big bear. And I'm like, no, I am taller than that bear. That bear is the size of a large dog, but he does have big, nasty claws that he's going to grow into.
oh my God.
Aren't they fun?
Wow. I just can't believe how have you been able to capture all these?
So I have security cameras out back and I leave the good Canon camera with the zoom lens in the sunroom and, for people to pick up. So that's actually 5 bears. The girl almost looks like a sixth one. And he dragged that bag of dirt from way up here all the way down across my yard. So I sent that to people, the video to people and said that, I have a new landscaper.
Oh my
There's
God.
the owl taking off. I am
Wow.
going through these pretty quickly just so people aren't like, okay, whatever. That's a hummingbird feeder right on the window of my sunroom. And so he's trying to get the nectar. But I just love the picture of his paw.
Uh-huh.
I love these two by the fence. They look like they're gossiping.
Ah.
But they
Wow.
love to just hang out in my tree. It's a live oak tree and smack dab in the center of the yard, and they just climb up it like it has stairs.
Oh my God.
Isn't that great?
They're amazing.
So on the days that I can't do anything, I'm happy to kind of sit in my chair out there and just watch them come and go. And the bird feeders are hanging from a tree, which yes, obviously bears can climb, but they're way out on the edge. And the bears are smart enough to know that if they go all the way out to the end of that branch, they're going to break the branch and they're going to fall. We have all these little lizards, and that's actually the same one who changed colors while I was watching him.
Oh my God.
Another close up. So this is a the backyard security camera and then a bird feeder right in front of it. So that's how I'm able to get some of the really up close ones.
Oh,
Some of them are just the zoom on the good camera. Not funny. Another
wow.
little blue bird. I should have looked to see
Stunning.
which. Not sure. Oh, so I have two different kinds of hummingbirds. That's the ruby red throated. And then I'm not quite sure what the other fat plump one is. Oops, there's the two owls in the tree.
Oh,
And when they hoot, they lift their tails, which is kind of funny. Every time he made a little hoot noise. So there's the other kind of hummingbird, a little shorter, fatter, rounder. But they're pretty territorial, man. One will hide in a bush, and when the other one heads towards the feeder, the other one will come dive bomb him. It's pretty funny.
oh my gosh. So beautiful.
Isn't that fun? That's actually not a goldfinch. The goldfinch has the mask, and of course, right now I can't come up with it. The mourning doves, which I thought were so funny, lined up like that because I have the three kids.
Mm. Yeah, a lot of appreciation on Facebook. So much life in your backyard, said Michelle. Rachel says you're so talented. Cuteness overload. So, oh my
That
God.
was supposed to be a birdhouse, but the squirrels made it their own, and that's one of the
Wow.
birdhouses that I made.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
Let's see. We did have a question. I almost forgot to go back to someone's question here. Let me. Um, oh, we did have a question from Ash. Ash was asking about hydration, and water, uh, effects with medication and when you don't drink a lot of water.
Well, anybody, when they're not drinking enough water, is going to feel more tired. So that's part of that whole diet health regimen kind of thing that I try to be good about, which is why this is my house, my house cup, that holds, and I try to just kind of sip on this all day long. Some days I'm better at it than others, but it definitely helps. I don't notice dryness from the medication, but I some days do really well on the water and some days I don't.
Yeah.
Sometimes like I'll make a meal and I'm just too tired to eat it. Like I need something like pureed food or applesauce or something, or ice cream. Ice cream goes down pretty well. Um, because cutting up steak and chewing it it's just so much work.
Hmm. Yeah. Cooking for me, like, yeah,
Mhm.
it's better to do something really early for me and then that it lasts like 4 days so then I can keep having
Yeah.
it
Yeah,
over
there's
time.
very little uncooked meat in my freezer. And I started that when the kids were little. We would buy the large pack of chicken and we would cook it all. And then I would freeze it in, one, two, three, four chicken breasts, whatever, in a bag. When the kids were growing up, there was always taco meat in the freezer. And we had a quesadilla maker. So there were always wraps and melted cheese. So when I just couldn't, they could.
Yeah, those are great tips, actually. I should do some of that. Oh, well, so you've also been able to give your Rising Voices presentation live, I believe. Do
Yes.
you want to share about that experience?
Well, that was fun during the whole prep and learning about how to, formulate my story through Rising Voices, which Lauren was a lot of fun to work with, and the group was really neat. We had some guy, from Africa and people from Virginia and Washington, so it was really nice to see other people, but I haven't met them. Um, so I called my daughter, who was in PA physician's assistant school in Fort Myers, which is about an 8.5, 9 hour drive, 10 hours, depending from here. And I said, hey, they're challenging us to find people that we can do our presentation to. And I thought that the PA students would be a really good audience. I said, I can either do it live or I can do it Zoom. And she said, oh, well, that's obviously going to have to be live. And I said, well, I mean, I could, like, why? And she goes, because Rachel and Jewel are going to need to hug you. I'm like, okay, I'll come do it live. And that was really neat. We actually think that one of the kids in her class might have a sleep disorder based on the numbers that she came up with in the idiopathic hypersomnia severity scale. So that was kind of interesting. So if I maybe helped one person take a deeper look, then that's a good thing. But it was fun to be there. They were good kids.
Wow. So PA, so physician assistant, right?
Correct.
Yeah, and what an important audience to
Mhm.
reach. Because as we know, often sleep disorders are not really included in a lot of curriculums for different healthcare professionals or
There was a meme that went around for a while of the physician, saying, don't confuse your Google search with my medical degree. And then the corollary to that is don't confuse my lifetime of living with a disease with your 1 hour medical lecture. Like, I think I have a better idea of what's going on in my body sometimes.
Yes, that's such an important perspective. And yeah, something that I think we always try to instill in people is reminding them of the confidence of trusting your gut and your experience. And so, yeah, and that story about the person that told you to try what, crystal
Crystal
meth?
meth.
Oh,
Isn't that nice? Yeah, that was a medical professional. I'm like, is that a prescription? Do you have notes of where I can go? Like, no, thank you. I'll be
well,
kind.
we're glad you have a great sense of humor.
What else? Yeah,
Um,
you either cry or you laugh. I'd
yeah.
rather laugh.
Yeah. Well, I don't see any other questions from folks here in the chat. Just a ton of appreciation. You'll have to go back and check out all these comments
Oh,
from people that are saying, talking about the pace of life and, the pace of life has this person, Michelle said, has given her the opportunity to appreciate what cannot be found in the rat race of life that many are caught up in. And just a lot of appreciation.
oh, good.
And also that we're going to maybe appreciate our backyards a little bit more. So, so just thank you so much for sharing your story today. Is there anything else you really wanted to share with the audience today?
I don't think so. I think I kind of pack a whole lot of it in there. I have been very fortunate to be surrounded by people who, like I said, don't get it, but okay. Um, there's always people that are like, oh, this is an idea for help you sleep better. I'm like, I don't have a problem sleeping, but my body doesn't recognize it as productive, restive, restorative sleep. And I don't think there's anything that you can tell me to do to make that different. So
Yeah. Yep. The what was it? The ankle analogy you mentioned was really powerful,
well, that comes from my PT. Just
Uh-huh.
because somebody's limping, it doesn't mean that it's their ankle.
That's such a good analogy and the etch a sketch. So I'll be taking many of those along with me
Well, good.
in my journey. So just yeah, and a huge thanks again to Lauren, who manages the Rising Voices program.
Yeah, she
If
did great.
you haven't yet participated, the application for next summer's training will be open mid-February as well. So you can start applying and become a speaker like Becky. Yes. Okay. Well, thank you so much again. I'm trying to send you lots of spoons and forks your way for the rest of the day. And
No
just
forks, lots of spoons.
lots of spoons, all the spoons. We're sending all the spoons. And thank you everyone for tuning in, and we'll hopefully see you again soon.
All right. Well, thank you. It's nice to finally meet you too. So I appreciate that.
Yes. Yes. Thank you, everybody. Thank you,
Bye.
Becky. Bye.
Bye.